Hello and welcome to the Global Dialogue. I'm Shireen Bhan, and today we're in conversation with the President and CEO of Hilton, Chris Nassetta. Chris, many thanks for joining us here on the program, and it's good to have you here in India post the pandemic.
Yeah, Shireen, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's very nice to be back in India. It's the first time back since 2019. Seems like a long time, but a lot of great things happening in India, a lot of great opportunities for us, a lot of fabulous things happening in the industry, and really happy to be sponsoring HIXA here at the Hilton in Bengaluru.
You know, I'll talk to you about India in just a second, but you talked about 2019 and how the world changed post the pandemic. And many wrote obituaries of the travel, hospitality and aviation industry saying that things will never go back to normal again. People are not going to travel, people are not going to fly. And yet here we are, 2022, literally every hotel chain, large hotel chain, recording stellar numbers, including yours.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of famously said in like March, April, May of 2020, when asked by reporters on, blogs, on all the, international networks, how's the industry going to survive this? What do you think is going to happen? Isn't it true that nobody's going to travel like they did before? I said, I don't believe that to be the case. I think that people have a strong desire to travel for all sorts of reasons. Right now they can't because they're worried about health concerns. But when we get to the other side of the pandemic, I think it'll look a lot more like it did than it does. And to many, that was outlandish. I mean, to many, people would raise their, eyebrows, roll their eyes, chuckle. But I think I've proven to be right. Not that I'm always right, but in this case, I have been right. I mean, we've seen broad recovery around the world. Certainly here in India, we've recovered beyond the levels that we saw prior to the pandemic. And that's true almost everywhere in the world because people really do want to travel. It turns out that humans need humans. They want to travel for leisure and to have fun. They need to travel to keep their businesses going and to build relationships. And just like we're doing here at HIXA, they need to congregate at meetings and events in order to build relationships and innovate and collaborate. And so the industry is, many thought us dead during COVID, but we're certainly not. We're back, and things are quite positive everywhere in the world. And I think the opportunities everywhere are great, and particularly good here. Not just now, but I think for many, many decades to come in India.
Yes, the recovery has been pretty secular. But what does the outlook for 2023 and beyond look like? Because we are dealing with global macroeconomic uncertainties. It's a challenging environment. Interest rates are moving up. Perhaps the stimulus buffer that people enjoyed, that is now going to be sort of something that we need to question. What will that mean? And maybe you've seen the best in terms of pent-up demand and revenge travel or what have you. What will that mean then over the next 12 to 18 months in terms of travel trends?
Yeah, I look at it as like we have headwinds and tailwinds. The headwinds you talked about, we have a lot of geopolitical concerns, around the world, macroeconomic issues with inflation in many parts of the world high. And as a result, central banks around the world trying to curb inflation by slowing economies. That's generally not good for any business, including travel and tourism. And so those are clearly headwinds. Having said that, there's a bunch of tailwinds that are big benefits to the business. You mentioned pent-up demand. We certainly are still releasing pent-up demand, particularly, a little bit in the leisure, but particularly business travel and meetings and events. There's a lot of that. You have new demand because things have happened over the time of the pandemic that people realize that they need to catch up on things. You still have broader economic growth that is occurring in the midst of all this. You have greater mobility in the world. So COVID, accelerated a trend that existed prior to COVID, which is people can sort of work from anywhere because they have their device with them and they have, ways to get around the world, infrastructure, low-cost airlines and like. So greater mobility, different sort of workforce trends in terms of people's, time in office versus more flexible time. And you put all of those things together, and I think those tailwinds at the moment are much stronger than the headwinds, which is why you see demand continuing to be quite strong. At the same time, in most parts of the world, and certainly here in India, you've had very little capacity added. So not to oversimplify it, but the laws of economics are pretty powerful. You have demand growing for all the reasons that I talked about. You have supply that has been quite low because of a whole bunch of factors, but pandemic being the most significant of those. And while, yes, there's some headwinds, all of those tailwinds in terms of the broader fundamentals in the business are strong. So I expect 2023 is going to be a pretty good year. I expect 2023 is going to be better than last year.
Okay.
I think it's going to be around the world will be meaningfully better than 2019, the prior high water mark. And I do think over the next, you said 12 to 18 months, I think over the next 12 to 24 months, we are going to see in some parts of the world some macro conditions that are slowing, but again, against a world where broader demand trends are quite good.
Okay, so demand still holding, and the only reason I said 12 to 18 months is because, who knows?
Yes, who knows?
That's really,
I agree.
That's really no point forecasting beyond that.
I have an opinion on everything. That doesn't mean I know. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world, but at the moment it's quite good. And I would say what I do know is the trends as we look out in the next quarter or two or three, they're still very strong. Very strong, historically strong.
So here's why I want to address the China issue with you, because the last to open, and that is one of your most significant regions in terms of concentration, just under 500 hotels for you there. What are the indications coming in from the Chinese market at this point in time in terms of recovery?
Yeah, we have 500 hotels open and another 500 hotels in a pipeline in China. So we have 1,000 hotels opener in pipeline. It's a very big business. China, has been interesting because early in COVID, China got through it most quickly and recovered quite quickly, largely by domestic travel within China. And then when we got into Delta and Omicron, shut down, had a zero COVID policy, and really slowed down from a travel and tourism point of view. They're past that. They have now sort of joined the rest of the world. I think at this point, COVID is behind them. And they're opening up again, like it was in early 2020 in the first, wave of recovery in China. It's mostly domestic travel, and it's getting quite strong very, very rapidly. My expectation is as you get into the second half of this year, but more particularly next year, you're going to see a lot more Chinese outbound business and a lot more international business arriving in China, but that will take some time. It takes, infrastructure, making sure their airlines, get slots in and out, and those things are happening, day by day. That's getting better, but it'll take some time for that maturation process to occur. But it's coming back quickly. It's not quite back to 2019 levels yet, but getting awfully close.
Well, let's talk about India. You are here, so let's talk about how exciting the Indian market looks to you at this point in time. You talked about supply and demand. I mean, it's hard to find a hotel room in India today. We've also got the G20, meetings underway here.
For a whole year.
For a whole year, and that works well.
I talked to the Minister of Tourism about it. It's a very unique approach, which I love, to have it in 50 different markets throughout the country. It's
so how do you intend to capitalize on the India opportunity?
Yeah, we're relatively small in India, so we have open in pipeline about 40 hotels. That's against a population of 1.4 billion people. So I would say, like you look at the United States, we have over 5,000 hotels with a much lesser population. But the ultimate opportunity in India is extraordinary. It's a market that has huge domestic travel, very big outbound market, obviously in a post-COVID world. A very big population, incredible growing middle class with significant desire to travel, and very undersupplied from a hotel point of view. So against the 1.4 billion people, there's only 2.6 million rooms. I mean, using the U.S., which is the largest hotel market in the world, we have double the number of rooms with a fraction of the population. So as you look at the next, not just 10 years, but 10, 20, really the next 50 years in this market, I think there's unlimited potential for growth. So while we're relatively small, we're very committed to this market. We've been here a long time. We will be here. We believe that we can have a very large business. It will take some time. We believe that all the big international players that are here are at the tip of the iceberg. We're all relatively small relative to scale that we have, certainly at Hilton in other parts of the world, but the underlying fundamentals are extraordinary. There is no market in the world where the underlying fundamentals over the very long term are better.
Well, if that is the case, and that's your hypothesis, that there's no market
indeed
like India at this point in time in terms of the underlying fundamentals, what will be the priority areas? Is it going to be, as you said, you're small today, but you intend to focus much more on this market? Luxury, is that the end that you intend to focus on? Premium economy, or the lower end of the market?
Well, I'm going to give you a scoop. So luxury for sure. We're gonna sign at lunch today a Waldorf Astoria in Jaipur, which is an extraordinary resort market, an unbelievable weddings market in India. Weddings are obviously a major industry all around the world, and particularly here in India. So we're really excited about getting Waldorf Astoria, the most iconic luxury brand in the world, in this market. We already have Conrad represented. And so we'll continue to grow in the luxury space. But the way we think about this market is the same way we think about every market. It's a network effect. So what we want to serve in India, and for that matter around the world, is we want to serve customers for any need they have, anywhere they want to be. So that means we have to cover all price points. The biggest trend around the world, which is also true here in India, is the mid-market. Why? Because the bulk of the population that is going to travel is in the middle class. And that's what those folks can afford. And so we very much like the luxury space, and we'll continue to do that. We like the upper upscale space with our core Hilton brand, the most recognized brand on earth. But we also will be very focused on the mid-market. For us, that is already represented by Hilton Garden Inn, which is here in this, but many more Hilton Garden Inns, as well as Hampton by Hilton, and potentially other brands in the mid-market. So when you wake up in India in 50 years, okay, what you'll have is much like we do in most of the other major travel destinations in the world, you'll have a very large number of hotels, and you'll have representation across all the different price point so that we can serve customers' needs for any travel.
I don't know if I'm going to be around for the next 50 years or not.
Sure, you will be. I might not, by the way, I might not be, but... So
the next 5 years, how many hotel rooms for the Hilton Group in India?
I think opener in pipeline, 75. That's what our aim is. That's what my team here is very motivated to accomplish. And I think that's very feasible for us.
Okay. Outside of India, and let's talk about the trends that you intend to focus on. There's the leisure plus travel market that has become a thing.
Bleisure.
Bleisure.
I hate that word, but we all are using it.
I don't particularly like it either, but I'm not going to use hate. It's too strong. But vacations, staycations, I mean, we've gone through a whole bunch of things through the course of the pandemic. What are you seeing as emerging trends? How much of this is transient? How much of this is likely to be more permanent?
I think the biggest trend I see is again, just the continuation of a trend we've been seeing for 100 years, and that is mobility. Okay, so why do people, sort of blend business and leisure travel? Because they're more mobile, because they can, because they have a little bit more flexibility in terms of their work environment, and they got this thing that they carry around in their pocket or their purse or whatever, where they can pretty much work from anywhere, so they're more mobile. They can get around. There's more airports. There's low-cost air carriers, rail, highways. There's a lot more infrastructure and that affords mobility. And so when you lift way up and you think about our business, over a very long span of time, what has driven the most important underlying driver of growth in our business has been increased mobility. People want to travel. We know that. That's the human condition. They want to interact. They want to travel. They want to see places. Having the ability, having the infrastructure, having the technology, and the flexibility in their lives that allows them to take advantage of that mobility is a very powerful thing. So I think bleisure, I think everything that you're seeing is a continuation of people having more mobility in their life, more flexibility in their life. And I think that's a trend that's going to continue. And I think it's going to be a very, very positive trend for our growth over time.
You talked about mobility and the fact that you can pretty much now do anything across your mobile phone or laptop from anywhere in the world. And so I want to talk about technology and what you're doing with technology on the back end and also, more importantly, at the front end. And what the use of technology and digitization is going to mean eventually for a business like yours in the next 5 years. Does it help eke up margins even further? What does it mean in terms of workforce, workflow?
Listen, I think in the end, we are always going to be a business of people serving people.
So ChatGPT is not going to replace people?
No. I mean, what technology is going to do, I think of technology, I sort of made up this phrase called phygital. It's the blending of the physical and the digital. I don't know, somebody made it up and I took it or I made it up. That's how we think about it. Is there's always a physical element to what we do, whether that's the hard product or the people serving people, the service delivery of our people, and then there's the digital element to it. How they think about when they dream about a vacation, booking or a trip, booking a trip, how they interact with us and do things during their stay, how we interact with travelers after the stay. And there's a bunch of things in that continuum of how we engage with a customer that can be digitized that makes it more efficient, but also takes friction out of it and affords more delight to the customer. And in the process of doing it, allows our people to focus more on the things that we can't digitize, that ultimately allow us to curate a better human experience. And so that's how we think about it, is blending the human and the digital in a way that creates unbelievable consistency, but also a world-class friendly experience for the customer.